Consequence Podcast Network.
Welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith With. It's an audio interview series presented by WFPK Independent Louisville, Consequence of Sound, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Where are you listening from today? Can you hit the subscribe button? I'd love it if you do that. Or if you're in a place where you can leave a review or give a rating, please do that as well. I'm Kyle Meredith. Today, my guest, Merrill Garbus of Tune-Yards. The new record, I Can Feel You Creep Into My Private Life. Listen, this is a really fun record, and it needs to be said because you can just listen to it and it's so much fun, but it's a very heavy record. Dive into the lyrics and you're going to be hearing about race, representation, and white privilege. I also asked Merrill about growing up on both coasts. She's bi-coastal, East Coast, West Coast. That gives her a unique perception to what's happening out there in the environment and with the environmental causes. That's all coming up. It's Kyle Meredith with Tune-Yards.
Hi, Merrill. How are you?
I'm just fine. How are you?
I'm well. It's good to talk to you again.
Likewise.
Well, let's get into the new record that we've been such huge fans of, I Can Feel You Creep Into My Private Life. It's an uncomfortable title just from a journalistic point of view to even bring up, and I understand there's a much bigger issues here, a petty thing that I say, because I always feel like that's exactly what we're doing as any kind of interview.
I mean, but one that I'm acquiescing to. No, I mean that we're making a deal. You promote the fact that I'm a musician making music, and that we're playing a show or whatever, selling a record, and you ask about my private life.
I'll take the deal. There is much more important things happening on this record. I know you've been talking about a lot: race, representation, privilege. When did the themes of this start to take root for you, that you understood that this was going to be in a very important direction?
That's a good question. I mean, I guess, it's hard to answer because, how important is my opinion in, at a time we made this record before the election, during the election, after the election. So, all of the Tune-Yards albums are always the world as filtered through me. and that's just, of course, the world that I am privy to. So, I never know. I still don't know. I still, these shows that we're playing on this record feel very different. The people at the shows feel different. The experience playing the music feels really different. So, I don't know. I don't know other than to say that they're, living here in Oakland as a white person and as a white woman, there was stuff that was starting, I guess that I had scratched deep enough down that I was finally scratching some really uncomfortable stuff for myself, and it was time for me to dig in even more than we have in previous albums, because I think, the first Tune-Yards album is talking about race and whiteness, and all the Tune-Yards albums deal with cultural appropriation and a lot of questions. So it's stuff that I've been exploring for a while now.
I know you hope to start conversations, or I think a lot of artists hope to start conversations when they're writing about subjects like this. Now that it is out, now that these shows, as you say, they feel different, the people, feel different. Are they spurring the conversations? Are people coming up to you? Or is it leading on to those conversations that you might hope to have with your fans, with listeners?
That's a really good question. And I think I'm still asking myself, where do those conversations happen? I will say that we did a Reddit Ask Me Anything, and that was one of the only times that I really felt like I had the opportunity to hear what fans were really reflecting back about the record. But, when you play a show and you're at this, it's very clear that it's not everyone is having the same experience. And I know for me, I listen to music way before lyrics. So, for years and years and years, I'll listen to a record and really love it and enjoy it. And only a decade later will I go, oh my gosh, I had no idea that's what that song was about. So I have to recognize that people take in music so differently. So it may be that people have read interviews and are listening closely to the lyrics. And, I know some people for sure have reflected that they're grateful that someone's making music about these subjects, about whiteness, about white privilege. And also, I think I also need to recognize that I'm even saying that feels too narrow. It's not a record about white privilege. It's a record about a lot of things, including white privilege. So that's where music, I think, has its power, is that it doesn't mean one thing, and it's supposed to kind of live in all of us and keep growing and keep, touching on different parts of our lives and resonating in different ways.
With that, and you might have already answered this next question then, when you write something like this and for whatever hopes that you might have to who it would connect to, I don't know if there is, I'll get businessy here and say a target audience. Is this something that you would hope to speak to, me, I'm a white male, or is it an ally record, or do you have a sense of who you'd like it to connect to most?
No, I mean, I would love it to connect to you, to you, white man.
And it does.
And others. Yeah, I mean, that's been something really notable about the shows, is that it's just a wild assortment of people there. I mean, every generation that could possibly make it out of the house to a show seems to be there. It is diverse, although I will say, it's very clear to me that the majority of our audience is white, and I think for that reason, in no way to exclude, this music being for people of color, but it's also really clear that I have this opportunity to talk to white fans who might need to talk about whiteness and might need to explore whiteness more. And I think something about being white is wanting to get it right and wanting to not say the wrong thing, and that's part of culturally that we're trying to not make waves, and would prefer that we do it right the first time. And that's not the way that talking about race works. It's a big, confusing blob of a horror show, It's like, you got to talk about pain that's happened to other people without knowing what's happened to other people. You need to talk about your own pain, which is hard to give voice to compared to, other people's pain. And I don't think we have the language for it yet. And I think I would like to be part of starting to form language around it and use language that's being created now. But no, I think something that I've really been noticing and learning about this country is actually a lyric that's in one of the songs, Honesty, which says, this river runs so deep. I feel like, nothing, the world that I long for, where we can be fluent about race and about where we all come from, and we can step away from violence and state violence. And that world is not going to be easy to come by, because where we come from has these very, very deep roots in systematic oppression and systemic racism. And, it's just in the bedrock of how this country was formed. So with that, I think I understand that this album is kind of, it's part of many different trickles and rivers and people doing really good and important work, but over really long amounts of time. So, I have no romantic expectations, but I do really appreciate that. I've walked down the street in Oakland one day, and I heard someone blasting our song Real Thing from his car. And he was a white dude, and he was like kind of pounding on the steering wheel and like singing at the top of his lungs. And I was thinking, like, how cool is that to have, to me, what I interpreted was that, we'd provided some music and some words that someone really needed to hear and sing along to. And, that's gotta be enough for me, for sure.
I know this sort of trickles down to even the live show. When I compared it, the last one with Nicky Nack coming through, everything was bright, everything was bubblegum, it was a lot of fun. This sort of, at least in the press stuff, really takes a drastic turn on that. It goes the other way. Is that a visualization of what we're hearing as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it felt really, it was definitely intentional that our colors got muted, and there was, I think Nate and I we went back and forth a lot on that we didn't want to present a gloomy record, but it also felt dishonest to continue the Tune-Yards tradition of of super neon and bright. And the music is always celebratory. I think to a certain extent, we love, I love to dance. I love dancing with others. I love creating music that people want to dance to. So that's there, but I think, for me, in making the record, I wanted to give myself the opportunity to slow down and really feel some truths not paint over with rosy colors. Everything's bad, but it's okay. I wanted to really sink into finally feeling some grief, particularly around climate change and what we have now really done to the planet, and really let that sink in. Really asking myself as a white person not to paint over or gloss over the real reality of racial violence in our community. So that really felt like, we still wanted, there are plenty of bright colors, and we look toward, earth colors, like real colors, not manufactured colors, but yeah, visually we wanted to create something that felt human and tangible and of the now.
You brought up climate change, and I don't want to brush past that either, because you have the luxury of being bicoastal. You grew up on the East Coast, you've been living on the West Coast for a long time, which seems to me at some point in a lot of conversations politically, they use that against people. Just because you live on a coast somehow makes you separated from humanity. I'm not really sure where that comes from. I know you have a lot of connections here to the Midwest and Kentucky too. Do you feel like it gives you a different perspective, especially specifically when it comes to climate change?
That's a good question around climate change. I mean, I think a lot about it because living on a coast and having family on another coast, that's a relatively modern situation, and it means flying, which means burning fossil fuel. I think about my fossil fuel carbon footprint a lot. I do think that I do. I mean, I think that this, the coastal elites, this idea, I have to say, I understand where it comes from, and I how do I put this? I'm so grateful to have, not only family connections in the Midwest, Kentucky, Florida, but also the experience of touring where it's so clear the different communities that we're going into. And this last tour that we did where we went through Louisville, that a lot of people, someone said to me oh, I noticed you're touring the red states. Was that on purpose? And I thought, what? I hadn't at all thought about it that way. But of course, it's a total gift to be able to be in front of so much of this country, especially now where, there's just so much disconnect. And there's real danger, I think, of having Google specify enough for us what we want to search for. It's very rare that we hear opinions different than our own, other than kind of vitriol spewed by people that we know we do not agree with. So anyway, it's a gift, it's a gift. I feel like it's a gift that I come from parents who are from really different experiences, and it's a gift that we get to do this for a living and get not only to see this country but also the world. We're about to go to Europe and have been to Europe, and it's always so illuminating to see what's going on there and what the parallels are to what's going on here. And it feels like we have this opportunity to be ambassadors of sorts, or maybe the better way to put it is spies, information getters. We can kind of go well, yeah, that's an interesting perspective. Kind of reminds me of what they're talking about in Germany right now, or I heard my friend from Turkey talk about that. There's so much information and therefore wisdom that we get to be privy to.
I'm always so impressed how it comes out in the music, and wrap it up into this album again with "I Can Feel You Creeping in My Private Life." It's been such, I want to say it's a really fun listen to it. With everything that's going on, it's a really fun record. We're talking about heavy things here, but I love putting it on and just letting it play too. So compliments in that direction as well. Great.
I appreciate it. And yes, that's the thing that doesn't get talked about quite as much because yeah. I appreciate it. And thanks so much for playing it.
No problem, Merrill. It was great talking to you again. We'll see you the next time you swing by here.
Awesome. Sounds great.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Thanks so much to Merrill Garbus of Tune-Yards for that call right there. The new record, I Can Feel You Creep Into My Private Life. And hey, go ahead and subscribe to Consequence of Sound's YouTube channel. You can keep up with your favorite artists and interviews, or if you're listening to the podcast, iTunes, Podchaser, leave a rating or review wherever you're listening from, actually. If you can hit the subscribe button, that would be fantastic. And then head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show every Monday through Thursday from noon to 3 Eastern. I'm Kyle Meredith, and I'll see you next time.
Consequence Podcast Network.